take projection.
Welcome to Taking on Sports, y'all. I am TD. That is Greg. Greg, how you doing today?
I am good today, sir. How are you?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. Just sitting here enjoying this playoff game between Cincy and Buffalo right now. I guess that's a good place to start. We'll start the NFL playoffs. Last week, we signed off right at the end of that Buffalo-Miami game. The Dolphins put up a much better fight than expected. Then the Giants went on to steal one in Minnesota in a good game. Then the Bengals got more than they thought they would from a Ravens team without Lamar Jackson. We'll touch on the losers in a minute here. We'll move on to yesterday's action. The Chiefs beat the Jags. But Patrick Mahomes, a big story coming out of that one, has a high ankle sprain. That's big. How big is that for them?
I guess it just depends on how serious it is. He finished the game yesterday, but you'd have to think next week playing either Cincy or Buffalo. I mean, you can't go with Henny. So you have to do everything you can to have Pat out there next week playing.
Yeah, no, you don't. Chad Henne cannot be the man to take you to the Super Bowl in a full game. We've seen him do it in relief.
A couple years ago when he ended the game against Cleveland, but Pat came back the next week. We saw him with that pretty big drive yesterday. Got the touchdown to Kelsey. I mean, that was pretty clutch considering probably didn't expect to play at all. Came in, got a good drive in. So. In relief situations, he's nice, but the whole game, and not what you want.
No. And that high ankle sprain, that's usually that's always a tough one. That's usually kind of a tricky one. Yeah, it's a tricky one that can either linger for a few weeks and really limit your mobility. It helped. Which foot was it on? His plant foot or his lead foot too? That's always.
I'd have to.
Yeah, I'd have to. I can't remember that. That's always a big thing too. Right. And then one more thing to consider with that: if the Bills do pull this game out, it's in Atlanta, so it's on that kind of artificial turf, that field grass, and not in the cold on the possibly like kind of frozen ground in Kansas City or Buffalo. So
that changes things a little bit.
Yeah, there are kind of a lot of interesting factors, but of course we got to see if the Bills can come back and pull this one out. Since he wins, that game is in Kansas City. But other game yesterday, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts went out and just wore out the Giants.
Oh my God! Mm-hmm. And that was one I totally missed. I wasn't shocked Philly won, but I guess just with the uncertainty of how Jalen was going to look, and just the Giants looked pretty solid the week prior, and I thought, well, they might give him a little game there. They're familiar with them, shouldn't be scared of them at all, and they got rolled from the start to the finish, just dominating fashion.
Yeah, and I think the big story about that is Jalen didn't have to do a lot. Definitely not a lot with his legs, and he threw a couple of scores, but they just leaned on their backs, and that defense really played well.
They really took it to the Giants.
Kind of a statement. Everybody, I thought maybe it kind of soured on Philly in the last couple of weeks, and
kind of got told that they were soft, maybe not a good number one team, and and honestly, you have to think based off just what they did to the Giants in the regular season, and then also the Vikings, and then the Vikings didn't look that great in the wild card round. Even if it had been Minnesota, I don't know if we'd seen too much of a difference.
But yeah, so that they will face the winner, of course, the Cowboys and Niners tonight. Your Cowboys last Monday ran all over, threw all over the Buccaneers team. What chance do you give them against the Niners later?
I'm going in pretty positive. Just because at the same time, but positive, but very. I'm not expecting too much. Just because of our playoff history there. But I think we did a lot big statement getting not only the Tom Brady thing off our back last week, but just being able to win on the road. Yes, it's the Bucks. They're not a very good team, but I think it meant more, of course, with Tom there. But yeah, today just gonna come down to not making mistakes. Can't turn the ball over on the road in that atmosphere. Um, can't give them anything, and have to have long, sustained drives. Got to start with that running game. We got out with that passing game early last week. First couple of drives were kind of shaky, but this week you can't have those couple of drives where you're not moving the ball at all, quick 3 and outs, and have to sustain drives and build confidence early because it's a completely different matchup this week. One of the best defenses in the NFL and a much better offense as well. So, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Let's call it that.
Absolutely. No, I think a big key too is they have to do the one thing that nobody's been able to do yet, and that's make Brock Purdy put the Niners on his shoulders and win the game.
Right.
The way Shanahan and has all his weapons and the way he designed that offense, Purdy's played
It's
well.
not-
It's not like he
yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
had to do anything, but he's so well protected in that offense. Uh,
Yeah,
and
very
nobody,
well protected. But I mean, he's had some. It's not like he's not doing anything. Yeah, he's had some good passes. I mean, there's been he's had some passes that have looked very, very good there. More than what you would expect, not only from a rookie coming in that situation, but a guy who was at the bottom of the depth chart, middle of the season.
yeah,
So
exactly. Mr. Irrelevant, a third
last
stringer,
pick in
to start the
last
year.
pick in the draft there. And now it's interesting. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out. But you went from what you thought was your QB of the future to now you might have a quarterback controversy depending
Hmm.
how the season ends up. I mean, I'm sure they would like to keep it with the guy that they spent the big money on in the first round draft pick. But I mean, if this guy takes you to the Super Bowl, I mean, can you just tell him, well, thanks for everything, but
Yeah, maybe they got a good draft piece either way if they decide to
yeah,
hold on to
either
Brock
way.
or if they decide to go with Lance and trade Brock.
Yeah.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, the thing is we still don't know a whole bunch about Trey Lance
Right.
because I mean, what's it? He got hurt. What in that?
Third
Was
game.
it against the Bears?
Yeah.
That nasty game in Chicago. 'Cause I
Hmm.
remember it being real muddy, and we still don't have a whole lot on Trey Lance. So know if he is going to be a good quarterback, or if they really whiffed on it, or somewhere in the middle. I don't think we still have a good idea on him at all.
No, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of questions going to be asked of that coaching staff in the front
Right.
office in the offseason,
Exactly.
regardless of what happens.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so all right, so right now we got the Bengals are up 14 in Buffalo with
14 about the end of
almost
the
at
third.
the very end of the third quarter, like less
Ooh,
than a minute here.
and they have the ball.
Yeah, and they're about to get the ball to 4th and 2
Wow.
here, unless Buffalo pulls out a fake punt in their own 20. Um, all right, so possible Kansas City, Cincinnati, and then we got the Eagles. They'll be hosting. We know that either way.
Okay.
Uh, who is your favorites? Who are you thinking to make the Super Bowl right now?
Yeah, as of right now, I mean, going into this, I thought it was Buffalo, but Cincinnati pulls this off. I think Cincinnati goes in, and I think they can beat Kansas City like they did last year. I
Hmm.
don't think it's going to be like a comeback situation. I think that they're going to go head to head, toe to toe with them from start to finish, and it wouldn't shock me at all. But right now, based on how they're playing today, and Joe has held his own against the Chiefs, I would say the Bengals are my favorite to come out there, the AFC.
Yeah.
Uh,
What about the other side, the NFC?
on the other side, I would love to say my Cowboys, but that too much of a homer thing. But just based on how everything's gone the last right now, it's hard to pick anybody but the 49ers at the moment, just because they've been dominating teams, and they went in on a 10 or 11 game win streak right now, and
Hmm.
don't seem to be showing any weaknesses. There's not a whole lot where you can be like, well, this is what you can focus on because they've just been crushing teams. So
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on both counts. The Bengals just look they on a big winning streak of their own here in the
Yeah, they are.
the AFC. They didn't look great in those two games against Baltimore. But that's a division
But
rivalry,
that's a
and
division game.
the Baltimore.
Rivalry is. I mean, you knew even with all the injuries and no Lamar, that your Ravens are going to show up last week. And honestly, I mean, Cincinnati's super lucky that Dobbs wasn't the one running the ball at that goal line
Oh
situation.
yeah.
Man.
Oh, don't worry. I'll get to that. I'll get to that. But yeah, no, I agree. I think maybe we might get a rematch at a couple of those 80 Super Bowls, Bengals and
Yeah,
49ers.
right.
But we still do have another classic matchup, a Cowboys 49ers NFC
Right.
playoff game coming up here in a couple
A lot
hours.
of lot of history
A lot of
overall
history. Yeah.
between the two. This was a strong rivalry when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of fell off for both teams for a while, but back to where it all started for the dynasty for the Cowboys in the '90s there, and ironically, it's the 30-year anniversary of that NFC title game, which back then, of course, was Candlestick Park, but 30 years later, not the NFC title game, but division run and on the road there in San Francisco, kind of where it all started. Similar situation. I mean, going into that game, I remember as a little kid, I remember Dallas really wasn't supposed to win that game. I mean, the 49ers, it was their thing to win there. So that's, hoping that 30 years later we can kind of pull that same magic and come out a winner.
Go in there. I mentioned we'll talk about the losers just real quick on every team, see
Mm-hmm.
how their season was. And I guess we'll start in Baltimore. We didn't mention they played a hell of a game, better than I thought they would. Um, Tyler Huntley played maybe one of his better games in the
Right.
Ravens uniform
Yeah.
until that horrible, just a bad decision to try to quarterback sneak and put the ball up over the top from 2 yards away.
Right.
Of course, it's a quick side note. The biggest thing we learned from that is when the NFL Stats Twitter account posted that, according to the chip inside of the ball, he was zero point 0.6 yards away. And everybody took, wait, there's chips in the ball? Why aren't we using them to determine first downs and touchdowns now then? Like,
Yeah.
I think that they slipped up there. So that might be a huge offseason thing. But,
That might very well be. It's like, yikes, what? You mean
yeah.
we don't have to have these long delays of seeing where the ball's at?
Yeah, don't have to rely on a bunch of, like 60-some-year-old guys and carrying chains down the sideline. And,
Yeah.
as cool of a sight as it is to bring out the chain gang, like, come on, let's update this.
2023.
They can do it in soccer to figure out if a ball went, a centimeter over the line for a goal
Yeah,
or not. We can
it's,
do it in
it is
football.
2023. I mean, they got that with
Exactly. Yeah.
hockey with pucks. I mean, they have it.
Hmm.
They,
Yeah,
so,
we know you have technology and you slipped up now, but
yeah,
so the game, like you said, and Dobbins, he came out in his post game interview. There's no reason he shouldn't have got the ball there. They were
no,
first and goal from the 2, and they went with a pass and a run to Gus Edwards, and then the quarterback sneak from the 2.
right,
And it was Huntley's fault for trying to go over the top. It should have just been let his guys push him, but. Bad play call. A lot of Ravens fans upset with it. And then the next day, Greg Roman stepped down
yeah.
as the offensive coordinator. So maybe
Even he
finally a new era for the Baltimore offense.
yeah,
Coach Harbaugh did say that he wanted to keep it a run first team, which is fine. You can still lead with the
absolutely.
run, but you have to modernize that passing game. You
Oh,
have to. I mean, step one, if you're Baltimore, you got to sign Lamar. That's you don't want to
that's
franchise him. You want to
right.
sign him, extend him. Step 2, you need receivers. You need a number 1 receiver. They need really a deep threat.
Right.
I saw one mock draft that had them getting a Hyatt from Tennessee, which that'd be great. You need that
Yeah,
guy that can take the top
definitely
off the
that guy with the
defense.
top. Yeah.
But regardless, whatever coordinator you bring in, they have to rework the offense. They have to modernize it. They have to realize
Right.
that Lamar Jackson can run a pass first pro style offense like he did at Louisville. He threw for over
Exactly.
3,500 yards when he won the Heisman.
Right.
He ran a complicated Bobby Petrino offense. He can make
Yeah.
reads. He can sit in the pocket, and then
Exactly.
you don't. He's got great legs, but it doesn't necessarily mean he needs to be a run force quarterback. His best scrambles, his best runs are scrambles when he takes a defense by surprise, gets out of containment.
Exactly.
But
Because not only does
we'll
it save, I mean, you don't have that run first option. It saves him a lot of hits,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that have caused the issues. Where he's running first and then he gets blasted, and he take 3 or 4 of those a game. That's gonna take anybody out eventually because his
Exactly.
heart
Yeah.
rate's down.
Especially after the last 2 seasons, he's missed
Yeah,
like the last 5 weeks each of the past 2 seasons. You need to
exactly.
take advantage of a generational talent you have and not blow it.
Exactly. And we've
But we'll see
seen
where that
just
goes.
how, and I mean, he has all the, no matter what has been said, and people, there was some people like, well, why would he go on Twitter and announce before talk with the team? Or, I know some people are upset about that, but and still, he has all the leverage in the situation because you look at it, you see where the Ravens were last year before he got hurt, where the Ravens were this year before he got hurt, and how things ended. I mean, it just shows you just how different a team it is and how important he is to be there. Like that has to get done no matter what the feelings have been. If it seems like everybody's on a different page, whether that's true or not, that's what the media is going to sell you because that's what sells drama. So,
Absolutely, yeah. And I've seen some reports that said he was ill, which is why he didn't make the trip too. Not
right.
want to infect teammates, which it's irrelevant at this point. But yeah. So big offseason for the Ravens
Oh
and their
yeah, for
future.
sure.
They seem to fix the defense with the Roquan Smith trade.
Oh yeah.
I don't think Patrick or Marcus Peters will be back.
Mm,
That's probably a contract too big for them. But
right.
we'll move on. Let's see. Jacksonville, after their big win over the Chargers, they gave it some fight yesterday
Yeah,
against
they
Kansas
did. I
City.
mean,
But
they were in the game. I
mhm.
mean, that fumble at the end there, that was tough. But they're
But
a
they have
team.
a. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying they're definitely a team. If they just have to keep building on that,
Hmm.
and not. We've seen Jacksonville have playoff success in the past, and then they kind of sell everything or fall off completely for a couple of years, and you just got to keep that momentum going. Build on what you have. Add some more weapons in there, and they're a team that could be a very big contender for a while there, especially in that AFC South, which is not very very good. It's one that they can definitely take over and dominate.
Absolutely, yeah. They have built a great foundation. Doug Peterson did a great job building them back up after the Urban Meyer debacle. They need to probably improve that line, get Trevor Lawrence some more protection. And
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned weapons. They have them. They could get a couple more. They have Calvin Ridley. Remember, they made
Oh
that
yeah,
trade
that's
this
right.
season.
That could
He, I
be
think, goes for
sneakily,
his reinstatement meeting in February. If they're able to add him to that offense, that's huge.
that could be sneakily uh, huge, huge
Yeah,
addition.
that's big. The Giants, another team that had a much better year than anybody thought.
Oh
Brian Daboll should be coach of the year.
yeah, definitely.
Their all season, uh,
They have a lot to sign. I
they
saw
do.
this that Adam Schefter tweet last night, and I was like, wow, that's a lot of people.
They do. And I think their two biggest decisions right now. Do they roll with Daniel Jones? Did he do enough to solidify himself as their quarterback
Yeah,
of their franchise
let him
quarterback?
go with Saquon, and
Saquon Barkley's a free agent. Do they sign him? Does he accept some type of hometown discount, or do they decide that he's going to be too much money and let him walk it and
yeah,
try to free up money to sign a number one receiver that they need?
yeah, a lot of decisions making.
Hmm.
The Big
But
Apple. Wow,
yeah, um, Seattle. I think they're.
they're in a
I think
good,
we
they're in a really
are
good
they a
spot.
flash in the pan or are they for real? I think that's
Yeah.
the story with them.
Right, but I think they're just in a really good spot, though. I mean, considering all the uh, draft picks they have coming from that Wilson trade, there they still have their
Hmm.
first round draft pick, and how bad the Broncos were this year. They're going to have a high first round pick. It's just a matter of what do you want to do with that? Do you want to get your quarterback now, or do you think Gino can give you a couple years, or add something else to it, or so that'll be interesting to see just what direction they go in the draft there.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you keep Gino on the goodwill that he's built up, and then maybe draft a later round quarterback and develop? Or yeah, that's a interesting one to watch. Miami, I think the big thing there, obviously they got to fix their defense. There's some problems with that, but Tuva's the big story. Is he going to play again? Is he really healthy? they came out and said, coach said that he's going to be their starter next year. But
But yeah,
is
I
that the
don't
best
know.
thing for him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best for anybody because I mean, just the amount of uh, concussions this year is just yeah. You don't want to mess with that long term. And if he has a couple more next year, I mean, you don't want to see that at all.
No.
At the
Yeah.
same time, I mean, looking at it from the Dolphins' standpoint, and I know it sounds kind of ass because you're more worried about his health, but from there, I mean, do you want to spend more time with a guy who's going to be questionable at times? You don't know if he's going to make it through a whole season. When you're on the verge of where you want to be, I mean, you have one of the top offenses in the NFL, but you have to win now. The window's so small in the NFL. Do you want to continue to take a chance, or do you want to find maybe something more consistent, someone that is going to be there more likely to be there an entire season? Because we've yet to see Tua play an entire season. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. Yeah. What does it mean if he does come back? Do they get some more line help
yeah,
to try to keep him on the thing? I saw something this week about maybe he needs to learn how to fall better, protect himself more. And then, of course, like we just mentioned, there's a question of should he even play, So there's a lot for them to figure out too
exactly.
there.
Right there.
The Vikings, we'll move on to them. They are kind of a veteran-led team there. I think their question is probably, have they peaked and have they gone as far as they can with Kirk Cousins? He's got 1 year left on his contract. I think he'll be like a 36 million cap hit next year.
Right.
Do they try to move on or do they ride one more time with him? I think that's what they got to look at because they have the weapons and they got Justin Jefferson. They can build around him. Dalvin Cook's even he's approaching 30, which we know as a running back
Right.
is.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say there because it's easy to say, Kirk Cousins is the problem. Yes, we've seen Kirk had some good days. We've seen him have some terrible. Never that's been Kirk through his entire time in the NFL. The thing you want
mhm,
to always make sure, though, if you're moving away from him, are you getting better?
mhm.
And that's the big thing because he's not a terrible quarterback.
No, it's just he does make these kind of
By
frustrating
mistake.
decisions, like checking down on 4th and 8 in a
Yeah.
playoff game.
But at
uh,
the most frustrating thing, if I'm a Vikings fan, is I understand that the Giants went out of their way to take Justin Jefferson out of the game, but it didn't seem like he was on the field at all. Like you have
mm-mm.
to make ways for him to touch the ball, give him some targets, something. Like that was crazy. Just the lack of targets, the lack of, and kudos to the Giants for completely taking him out of the game. But you got to do what you can to try to make him relevant. I mean, he's arguably the best wide receiver in the game right now. And
No, yeah, that's the offense coordinator's job is
yeah,
to out
figure out how to use
scheme
them.
the defense. Yeah.
Because the last couple of weeks of the season, it seemed like he had totally disappeared in that Green Bay game. That Green Bay game, the last game of the regular season, they won, but he wasn't really relevant, and he definitely wasn't relevant in that playoff game.
No, yeah. Move down to Tampa Bay. Of
They
course, their
have a
big thing,
lot
Tom
of questions.
Brady.
Guys.
Yeah, they got a lot of questions. They got to fix that pass defense. It's bad. They got to address the run game and offensive line.
Yeah,
And the biggest
offensive
one is,
coordinator now.
yeah, Byron Leftwich was let go.
And that's a tough situation because, I mean, you have it where now they're saying Tom Brady's not coming back, and that he was the guy calling all the shots there, whether Byron was offensive coordinator or not. We know how that works
Mhm,
with the veterans such as him, and for them I mean, Byron had been successful up until this season, and it has
mhm.
something to do with it, but to completely basically say, "Oh, it was on you this season," yikes, that's a tough out.
Yeah. Especially, they're not really in position to make a high quarterback draft pick.
No, they're not.
Do they try to sign some free agent? Where do they go with their offense coordinator position? Yeah. Does Brady retire? Does Brady end up in Vegas
And,
or New York, as some
there's
people have said?
right. There's been some rumors that he already told the Bucks he wasn't coming back after the game for
Mhm.
whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
Who knows? And
Yeah, it's an
and
interesting
also
one.
as the Bucks, I mean, you got to look at it too. Yes, it's Tom Brady, but do you want to go through that again next year? I mean, that was
Exactly.
just everywhere, and it's not going to get any easier. He's not getting any younger. Uh,
Mm-mm.
I don't know. So a lot of
Yeah, a lot of times during he finished, I think, what, like third in passing yards in the NFL this year. But
yeah,
a lot of times that offense, they looked out of sync.
horrible.
Um, yeah,
They look absolutely average, and especially you look at it last week. I mean, the Cowboys for the first half of the 3/4 of the season was really good defensively, but the last month and some they had given up a lot of yards to a lot of teams, and they made the Bucks look pretty bad, and that says a lot, I think.
yeah, yeah. Um, and then we'll move. I think the last eliminated team, the Chargers. We've
Ooh,
already kind of seen what they've done. They also let go of their offensive
yeah,
coordinator, and their problems are right there in that game they played. One, they only ran the ball 6 times in the second
right.
half with a 27-0 lead. That you can't. You got to run
No,
the ball more. You
can't
got
do
to be
that.
able to run the ball more.
Exactly.
As many touchdowns as Austin Eckler scores, they're actually not a good running team.
At all. Most
And
of it, the
then that
receiving, it
defense,
seems like.
yeah. And they got to stay healthy. They're just kind of one of these teams that just kind of snake bit by injuries a
Oh,
lot.
yeah. I mean, they couldn't
Yeah.
keep a wide receiver healthy to save their life.
No, yeah. Do they go after some speedy receiver too? They don't really have a true deep guy either. They're a lot of big possession
Right.
receivers. But so yeah, that's it for the eliminated teams. Right now Buffalo down 17 now, about a little under 11 to go.
Not looking
I
good.
think if they get eliminated, I think their question is just,
Like,
what's the missing piece to
right.
put them over the top? Um, Obviously, I think Von Miller being hurt has been huge for them
Yeah.
on their
Yeah.
defense.
But then,
Maybe Josh Allen isn't completely healthy from that elbow injury,
right.
but
Yeah, it is
we'll see.
yeah, that's one of those situations because they're right there. But yeah, if they don't do it again in another division round L, and come into the season, I mean, they were clearly the favorite. Yeah, it just leaves a lot of questions, and that's a tough situation because you have to pick. What is the exact thing to focus on
Mhm.
when you're close. It's kind of hard to determine that at times. But, yeah,
Yeah.
but I think if Von Miller comes back healthy, I know Micah Hyde in that safety spot since he got hurt. I know that was a big loss. I mean, if they both were to come back healthy next year, but
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. They just have that. They need to find that, what gets them over the hump here
yeah.
in the AFC. All right, we can move on from the NFL now. Corner blitz.
Oh,
Um,
is that a fumble?
we'll move on to
Oh,
some Alabama basketball here.
man.
And then, Greg, did we talk about the Darius Miles news break before or after the
It was
episode last
after.
week?
It was
It was after. Yeah, it was about the
right
first thing, I
after.
think, immediately after we stopped
Yeah,
recording.
and that's just
Of course, big news that Alabama player Darius Miles, who before the game Saturday was announced out for the season with an injury, was arrested on capital murder charges. A young woman lost her life in Tuscaloosa last Saturday night. Horrible situation all around.
yeah,
Um, and then early reports from the investigation say that he provided the gun that was used in the
right.
murder.
Thanks.
He has been dismissed from the team and the university. Just a horrible situation.
Yeah,
Of course, all the focus is on that uh, young woman's family, her little child.
right. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, real tough. Alabama on the court
Why? Nothing.
went and got two tough road wins in
Big
places that haven't been kind to them in Vanderbilt and Missouri.
Yeah,
And looked good
that's
yesterday against
good.
Missouri. Finished strong.
Yeah, finished that first half. Started off a little, like we've seen in the past there in Columbia. Mizzou came out. That was a high energy crowd. 15,000 considering it was a Chiefs playoff game too. I mean, they really uh, packed the place. It was a good atmosphere, but yeah, we definitely answered the bell late in the first half and then carried that over into the second half for a pretty dominant win there. They I guess I had that one stretch where they cut it from 21 to 13, and then we kind of closed it out after that. But yeah, I mean, we'll just keep on going. That's all.
Exactly, and that's what we're watching. This week they have State at home. They've beaten them once. They beat them on the road earlier. And then the Big 12 Challenge, they go to Oklahoma next Saturday.
Yeah, that'll be
The Sooners not as strong as they have been.
no, they're not as strong, but it's a
Still a tough
place
one.
we slipped up a couple years ago. We went to Norman in that Big Big 12 Challenge, completely different situation there. Not even the same coach or anything, but yeah,
No.
we can go in there and get a strong statement win against not a terrible team, but I guess what kind of a middle of the pack Big 12 team. But I mean, Big 12 has I think it's taken over as the top basketball conference. I know a lot of people still think
Hmm.
it's the Big 10, but personally, I think it's been the Big 12 for the last couple of seasons, just with how even the bottom teams there, any night they can give you a game there. And the top teams we've seen have, handled their own. Of course, Kansas, a defending national champion, so they're, I think, the
Well,
best
yeah,
top to bottom conference there.
and they win national titles too.
Yeah,
For all the talk about
exactly.
the Big Ten, the last time they won a national title
2000,
was
Mateen
Mateen
Cleaves,
Cleaves in
Mateen
Michigan
Cleaves,
State.
and Mo Pete,
That's a long time ago.
2000. Yeah. Wow.
Um, but yeah, Alabama not just fighting for a one seed now, fighting for the number one overall seed.
Yeah,
Kansas slipping up a couple times this week.
and Kansas got crushed yesterday at
Mm.
home. TCU took it to them
TCU, yeah,
in Lawrence, and early in the week, classic game there against their in-state rivals, Kansas State. There, so took 2 L's in the week. Didn't even have to leave the state.
yeah, tough,
But
tough week for
tough,
the.
tough week for the Jayhawks. But that we'll see how they rebound. But I'm sure they'll be fine. It's Kansas. I mean, they've had
Yeah,
some slip ups in the past. Like that. I think even last year they lost two or three games there in the middle of the Big 12 season, and we know how that ended up. So
yeah. Um, but yeah, so Alabama fighting with right now Houston and Purdue
yeah.
for that one overall
And
seed.
I know Houston was in a fight earlier today. I kind of lost track of it. I think they're playing UCF.
I did not see that. We'll check that here while we talk. We can move on to the NBA. Not much to talk about. Nothing real big going on. LeBron did hit the
Other,
38,000
other
point
than
mark.
that fight for
Oh yeah, other than Shannon Sharpe trying to take on
the whole
Ja Morant's dad and the
Grizzlies and
entire
Ja
Memphis
Morant's
Grizzlies
dad.
team.
Hilarious
What
stuff.
very hilarious, and I'm not sure. Look, Shannon's a big dude, tough guy. He was a physical big tight end in the NFL. I don't know if you want to take on what's his face, Steven Adams,
Yeah,
as a big tough Aussie dude.
yeah.
That's not a dude I want
But
smoke
that
from.
was funny stuff there.
It was
It
hilarious,
ended up not
especially
too terribly. I mean, John's dad and Shannon were laughing and shaking hands after it. I mean, that's kind of what you want to see after that. I mean, it happens in sports. People get after it. Tensions run high. But they it ended up being handled okay there. So
But yeah, in the news, Houston fell to Temple
yeah, it
today.
was Temple there playing. So technically
Temple at
might be
home
number
too.
one.
Uh, so Purdue, yeah, they did hold on to beat Maryland.
Huh.
So it looks like Purdue will probably be your new number one
We'll probably be that
team.
number
Alabama will
two.
be number
Wow.
two. So yeah,
Ooh, big, big.
yeah, the ghost of the big dog, Glenn Robinson, pushing Purdue through.
Yeah,
That's a 19-1 team right there.
they're a
That's a good
good
team
team.
too. A lot of I think we mentioned it before. You talked about there's no clear cut absolute top
It's not
program this year. There's a
a lot of
good few
there's good
really strong teams.
right there. I mean, you look at them. You
Uh,
have Purdue, of course, us. Kansas in that mix. Houston will be in that mix. Tennessee will be in that mix.
mhm.
It'll just be interesting to see how it all plays out, and just come down to the matchups in March and who's in whose bracket, and as we know, people staying healthy and just everything that comes along with March, the upsets, and just how the brackets shake out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Go back to NBA. We got we mentioned the ridiculous Memphis thing. I said LeBron is closing in on Wilt Chamberlain's overall career scoring record.
Yeah,
Other than that, there's
that's
not
one
much.
with.
My Pels are. Oh, go ahead.
My bad. That's just one. Kareem's had that record since the '80s.
Oh yeah, Kareem, not Wilt. Sorry.
And that's not one that you would have, never. People are saying he didn't ever think that was going to fall himself. So, I mean, this just been, just the epic run for LeBron for his career. I mean, just the amount. I mean, just the amount of hype he came into the league with, and just he was able to go above and beyond that, and not only that, but sustain that for the amount of time that he has. It's just been crazy.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. I remember watching his high school game on ESPN
Right.
back in
Yeah,
college.
exactly. That's,
But yeah, LeBron closing in on Kareem, like you said, not Wilt. I mentioned in terms of on the court stuff, there's been no big trades yet. Nothing major. The Pels are struggling right now without Zion, Brandon Ingram, and Herb Jones playing limited games. I think they've lost like 7 of their last 10 or something like that, and they're in a tight one with Miami today. I'm not sure. They were down like 2 and they're down 4 right now, a little under 4 to go. Tough there. The Nuggets and Grizzlies, because of that, they're kind of pulling away in the West.
Yeah.
From everybody else. The Kings are the 3 seed. Talk about a surprise right now.
They have a lot of young
Boston
talent
still. Yeah, they do. That's a really good foundation there. Boston still controlling the East, but maybe worried. Injuries to Marcus Smart and Robert Williams yesterday.
Yeah.
We'll see how severe they end up being. So yeah, that's just we're kind of waiting for something big to happen in NBA in terms of the trade deadline, a big trade,
Right. Yeah, it's
to
kind of
really get going.
sitting and waiting, seeing what'll happen. And that's one thing the NBA's been good for the last couple of years. They definitely given us something. So that.
Yeah. And we can finish up probably with some quick college football notes. Jim Harbaugh did announce he's returning to Michigan. So he will not be moving to the NFL. That's big for them.
I think this year that was more a ploy to get more money for him. Last year, I really think he was interested in that Vikings job. I don't necessarily think that was really him pushing to go to the NFL. More so, it's more the media and maybe his agent pushing the story. Maybe get him a little bit more money and Ann Arbor. But.
And we've seen it before. Why not? Spencer Sanders, Oklahoma State quarterback, is transferring to Ole Miss.
They have quite the plethora of
Lane
quarterbacks.
Kiffin they're just building an armada of quarterbacks there. Jackson Dart's still there.
They
got recruits coming in.
They brought in the LSU guy too.
Yeah, so I don't know if he's going to have a big competition and the losers are going to transfer out, or they're sticking around, or he's going to go the Steve Spurrier method and just
whoever's
play
hot.
3 quarterbacks.
Who's ever hot, whatever Saturday.
Yeah. And then some kind of more interesting than anything news. Ed Reed, about 3 weeks ago, has announced that he would be taking over as coach at Bethune-Cookman, and then now he's not. The university did not ratify his contract. Depending on whose side
you're on,
you look at, there's a big heated video of him giving a heated speech to his team and saying that there were forces against it, didn't want it to happen. So maybe a little, some university presidents or something.
They were originally upset with his video a couple weeks ago as well when he
put up the trash video. Yeah,
and that's that's a one that you don't know. It's one. I guess you look at it from 2 different ways. You could look at it from his side of, man, he's really come into a situation, and just a lot of those situations are known to be going on in HBCU schools, but not really getting a spotlight. And that I think that's what some of Dion was trying to do, and Seen the game a little attention, but maybe not the best way to go around it because at the end of the day, that's still your employer. So you really can't just nationally expose them and expect them to be like, oh, yay. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, probably some, and we'll see. I'm sure a bigger story will come out later, give us some more insight. But I'm sure unfortunate for those
Yeah,
kids.
because I'm.
Not going to be able to get coached by a
Yeah,
legend.
definitely. I mean, yeah, that's a big change. I mean, I'm being recruited possibly by Ed Reed to a guy you probably don't even know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm sure that's going to hurt them some in that regard. That's all I had there. Kind of a shorter show this week, unless Greg, you got something else we missed?
Well, I guess just the NIL stuff, that $13.5 million
Oh
in
yeah.
Florida.
Ooh.
Just kind of crazy to see how true that was. What did all that include, and just kind of where this whole situation's going with him? Because he was in Miami, and then he committed to Florida, and what's going to happen to him next? And you always wonder how true was that 13.5 million. What all did that include? And because it doesn't look good for Florida, and schools are going to start looking at this guy like, my goodness, as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation right there. Maybe that what they thought might be the heir apparent to Anthony
Right.
Richardson there.
I mean, and
Not so
this is a
much
guy that
now.
hasn't played yet. Some supposedly getting 13.5 million.
Exactly.
So then you have that opens up too. You have guys that have been stars for a couple years. What are they going to start? What are they going to start demanding or looking at when they, whether they stay at their school or go somewhere else? I think that'll open up some things as well.
Yeah. So the first transfer portal is closed. We'll get the second signing day here in a few weeks, and then another transfer portal open up. So some off-season stuff still happen. As Alabama fans, we're still waiting for news on the offensive coordinator situation. Technically, Bill O'Brien is out of contract.
Yeah.
So
supposedly he was taken off the website. I don't know how true that was or not. That's what I've heard. He's not on the school website anymore. I don't know. I haven't.
Yeah, he did have his official interview with the Patriots this week. So
hopefully
we will
knocked it out
see.
the park.
yeah. Hopefully he was great, and Bill Belichick remembered maybe why he liked him in the first place.
Bring him back, and they could have a lovely relationship, and we can get on to something new.
Yeah, we can move on. All right, so what's been done up real good for you this week?
Done
then,
up
Greg?
for me real good this week. I would just say how far my son has come along in school with reading and math and everything in the third grade. It's been at times a struggle, but he's just coming along great. So I'd love to see that. So, how about you?
I will keep it, I guess, in the sports world this week. Shout out my boys Arsenal, the Premier League, 2 big wins, 2 derby wins. They beat their North London rival Tottenham last week, 2-0, just dominated them, and then a huge last-minute win earlier today against Manchester United. 50 points through half of the season, a 5-point lead over Manchester City with a game in hand. Of course, they play them 2 times in the league coming up and another time in the cup. So it's going to be big. It's hard work, but, it's been 20 years since Arsenal won a title, and it seems like it's a real possibility this year. So it's just fun to watch regardless. This is a team that fights hard and plays really beautiful soccer. But that should do it for us this week. As always, folks, do check out everything we have to offer on the Alabama Take and our Alabama Take family of podcasts. I'm sure the Alabama Slam will be must listen for wrestling fans this week with the Royal Rumble next Saturday.
Man.
Oh, yeah. Big. Always one of our favorite events is we watched at the Tuscaloosa Hooters when they used to show the pay-per-views back in college.
Pretty epic. I mean, you basically just buy a meal and sit there for 4 hours.
Yeah, it was great. I'm sure it sucked for the girls there. I'm sure they weren't making a lot of tips because they weren't turning over tables at all. But it was fun for us, except for sitting on those damn bar stools for 4 hours.
By the time you got to 11 o'clock and then started having to pee and stuff. You're like, my goodness.
Oh man, the worst was it WrestleMania 20 when it was like a 5 or 6 hour show. That was man.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of back problems developed that day. That the Hooters off of Skyline there in Tuscaloosa. But all right, folks, we will see you next time, man. Greg,
Yes, sir.
take it easy, bud.